Without further ado, I'd love to kick us off for today's E is for Experience webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us, depending on where you're joining us from today. We thank you for taking the time today in your busy schedules to tune in live. My name is Marina. I am the Solutions Marketing Manager here at Contentstack, and I will be your host for this webinar, and I'll disappear until the Q&A, but just wanted to kick us off with some general housekeeping. Before we start, you'll find that we have muted all the lines because we are quite crowded here, so please don't take that personally. We are very much interested in your thoughts and questions, and please ask them via the question box in the control panel on your screen, and we will go through those towards the end for the Q&A portion. You can find that at either the top or the bottom of your screen, and we might bring them up during the presentation towards the end as well. If you experience any technical difficulties, please get in touch via the chat, and we will do our very best to help. Lastly, we are recording this webinar, and those who have registered will receive the recording via email. So we hope you can just tune in and be engaged and give our speakers your full attention. And without further ado, I will actually get into our agenda for the day before I pass it off to our speakers. So for today's webinar, we're going to talk about today's e-commerce trends, why more companies are choosing to go with composable commerce, how businesses are updating their tech, and most importantly, today we have an excellent speaker. Leesa is here to tell us about their composable journey. And then, as I mentioned, we will finish with some great Q&A from all of you. So without further ado, I will pass it off to our speakers.
Hey folks, nice to see you all. Pleasure to see some friendly names and some faces that we recognize. So always glad to have a chance to have a chit chat with you all. My name's Nick Barron. I am one of our senior directors over in our technical services organizations here. I've been in the CMS world for 2 decades, basically, so very intimate and familiar with digital experiences and going through digital transformation efforts, especially in the world of personalization and commerce. So very happy and excited to have this chance to talk with my good friend Richard here from Leesa Sleep about what their journey and experience has been like. So with that, over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Nick. So yes, I'm Richard, Director of Technology at Leesa Sleep. Been with Leesa for around 7 years now, I think it is. So I look after the development team on the e-commerce side, and that means everything from architecture of our applications, our website, and our fulfillment through to the back end. Yeah.
That's quite the remit. All right. So I guess the big question, right? Why are we here, and why are we finding it so important to be talking about e-commerce, right? And I think the biggest reason is a number, and that number is $15 trillion in global opportunity by the year of 2028. Right, that's an incredible amount of just the general market transactions. Digital first is an approach that is now just working for organizations. There's a lot of organizations that are also switching from having brick and mortar presence to just digital commerce capabilities. So as we look into the future and the present at the moment, it is an incredibly large opportunity for organizations to be acting upon the the wealth of wealth that is now available. And as we kind of think about what are some of the challenges, right? So it's easy to say, hey, there's all these trillions of dollars out there, but obviously that's going to come with complexity. That's going to come with some challenges. So as we sit back, from my perspective, I look at sort of the whole scope of organizations that are leveraging digital e-commerce strategies, and some of the big challenges that we see are these ideas of these inflexible and monolithic approaches that have been in place. Any customer, any organization that isn't a digital first organization, right, typically has a big debt of technology that sits internal. So being able to do things like change and pivot quickly based on trends in the market, or as their customer base is evolving and changing with those inflexible older systems, it's really, really difficult to make those changes. But that also tends towards leading to this problem of gating information and data about the customers themselves, right? So when we have these sort of disparate systems that don't connect into each other with ease, from sort of a composable approach, it's very complicated to get data to where it needs to be to make those decisions, to really help the customer on their journey, right? And the most important asset is the customer. So being able to communicate in real time with them, to be able to figure out what they're doing and where they're doing it to help usher them across that journey is paramount to retaining them, to increasing the share of wallet, and to increasing loyalty as well. So I don't know, maybe Richard, are those problems that you've seen in your experience getting deep into the e-commerce challenges that you guys faced, or are there additional challenges that you might have seen?
Yeah, I think when we originally started with Leesa, it was just a case of putting a product on a page and selling it, and then it was more of a case of, well, how can we actually optimize what we're spending on marketing, and the results through that was quickly sort of leveraged that, you know, we need to interact with the customer and sort of understand the customer on site, as well as obviously leading to it. So yeah, I mean, gathering data, you know, ethically is an important thing as well. So yeah, it comes with definitely its challenges, and what data is actually valuable, and what can we use to actually drive success.
Yeah, and I think when we take a look at those challenges, right, that kind of leans into sort of the pre-canned answer that we're coming with as to why composable is the answer, to help solve some of those challenges, right? And I think the being able to choose the best of breed components, right, to allow for whatever today's needs are, to be able to almost in effect, and it's never this easy, right? So take this with a grain, but being able to hot swap different technologies in and out, allowing to enhance and increase the traction with the user experience that's being generated, right? And sometimes that's going to come through personalization efforts, or it's just going to come through enhancements to making, you know, pages load faster, if we're talking about web, or disseminating the same information in the same conversation and keeping that conversation consistent with the customer, regardless of the channel or touch point that they're choosing to use today, right? As we know, customers are very transient, right? You know, how many devices do you have in your house, Richard? It's probably a wealth of them, just like myself. And, you know, but we all switch back and forth between all of those things. So,
Yeah.
being able to meet whatever tomorrow's demand is, I think is a huge reason for going composable. It's such a competitive market that as technology is changing, right, with the advent of AI, and being able to pick technologies that can pivot into being able to leverage those things, to your point, in an ethical and productive way, I think is an incredible superpower, in terms of future proofing. You know, why we see composable as such a strong driver with these forward thinking commerce organizations.
Yeah, and I think where we were originally to where we are now with Contentstack is what we've found success with was that we struggled to sort of bridge the gap between what was on website and what the customer was sort of telling us and their experience. So having that data and being able to do something with it on the website has been fantastic for us.
Yeah, and I think that's the key there, right? Is our customers tell us things all the time, whether it's, you know, by visiting particular pages, interacting with, you know, an event like clicking an add to cart button, or actually giving us productive feedback that they're writing out, or surveys. So there's all of these different ways for customers to interact with brands, and people are more willing to do it now than they ever have been. And so by not leaning into that, right, by getting rid of some of these older platforms that don't pivot into those things, it's really easy to kind of drop those technologies that are holding back the ROI of these projects, and leaning into some of these technologies that allow that information to become actionable. And I think that's one of the big keys is, if we're going to collect data and we're going to give people the time and attention to tell us things, it's our responsibility, I would say, as brands, to do something positive with that information to help them make the right decisions, in whatever journey it is that they're on. All right, so I guess we've talked a little bit about why composability is a bit of a good approach, right? A little biased on that front, obviously, but I think all those points hold true. So let's jump in and talk about why composable commerce itself is going to be the right approach that we have. And I think a lot of the same ideas hold true, right? When we think about things like having a digital experience platform in a composable architecture that's connected with our products and our commerce engines, being able to get things out right faster. Whoever's going to be first to the race has a chance of winning the race a lot sooner than everybody else. So being able to increase our velocity of content and marketing material that supports the product, that supports the commerce approach is incredibly key and important. And being able to flex into different concepts and ideas, right? Try things out. One of the biggest things, right, is see what works, right? Not all the spaghetti is going to stick when you throw it against the refrigerator, but when it does, be able to lean into those things, right? Let your failures fail fast and let your successes kind of grow and expand over time. I really think a huge part of these composable digital experience platforms as well is the ability to automate the automatables. Once we start talking about commerce and we start talking about data and we start talking about synchronization, it gets real heavy real quick. So being able to have these lightweight API first connections between things to surface data from one place into another to then action upon it and not have to sit there and worry about it. I think that automation becomes an incredibly important part of the story, which then ties kind of directly into the idea of integrating all of these platforms together. So, being able to leverage out of the box connectors, being able to leverage, supported integrations that exist between technology stacks really helps brands supercharge and accelerate their time to go live. And then the resilience of the platforms, right? It's one of the things we hear a lot about when people are sort of composing their tech stack from all these different pieces, is that space in between is where the risk is. And I think that's really gone now to most of the extent, because there's now layers that live in between there. At Contentstack, we've got the automation hub, we've got the marketplace, we've got all these different mechanisms for making sure that all of these core systems stay connected in real time effectively. And I think the final thing that I would say that leans into is this idea of an improved developer experience, right? So we're talking about how easy it is for marketers to do things, for content editors to do things, for data to flow. And what that does is, and Richard, keep me honest here, but from my perspective, that allows developers to create better experiences and not have to worry about maintaining broken or old experiences.
Yes, so with our headless solution, we can develop and build solutions that are not only reliable, but also fast and efficient. We can effectively put a component in within a sprint, which we do sprints in 2 weeks, and we can deliver pretty much successfully on that deadline. Before headless, things would probably take around a month. And we actually have a smaller team now as well. So not only are we delivering faster, we're more efficient as a team. We use headless and our host solution to provide preview URLs, so that work can actually be QA'd by a range of teams and signed off and go to production once that's agreed. This time saving has been a God blessing for us, so that we can move on to actually building features quickly and successfully.
No, that's fantastic. I think any time you can increase that development life cycle output, right, and in terms of kind of empowering the engineering side to create things faster. And one thing that you hit on that I love is the idea of being able to get it in front of the people that it matters to, right? In a preview state, in a QA state, be able to say, this is exactly what things will look like when we push the big go forward button, right? I think that gives so many people, especially when it comes to being able to test out personalization strategies, which we'll get into in a little bit. I think that's such a key part, is to not just assume and hope that everything's going to be pixel perfect, but be able to say, once we go live, this is what we'll have. So I really like that approach. Did you want to talk a little bit about what some of the key drivers that have really helped with your commerce experiences here?
Yeah, so when we actually started looking and exploring headless, don't get me wrong, it was a journey and many years in sort of the efforts. And I guess that was just more of a case of contracts and things around that. When we finally decided to sort of push the button and do the research, we researched many companies. And when we talked with Contentstack, you know, like many companies, they promise a lot of things, but they've truly delivered on what they've promised. And one of the successful things that I think has been really great with Contentstack is their customer service, as well as the technology, obviously. Is that, you know, customer service, you can speak with them on live chat, but when things aren't quite sort of communicating across, you know, they've been happy to jump on a Zoom call and sort of share screens and work through the issue that we may be having, and it's very quickly successfully, you know, fixed, or they're happy to take it away, and they do communicate coming back to us in an effective manner. So having that support and sort of, you know, handhold, I guess, has been fantastic, and having that sort of relationship with Contentstack has been great. You know, Danielle, our success manager, she's been fantastic. Nick, you've been great to work with, and everyone else involved. Can't name everyone, but yes. Our technology, you know, I would say I can't actually think of a day that we've been down in regards to our website being down because of Contentstack. Before that, I could probably count 3 or 4 times every single year that things would go down. And there's always a big question from above saying, why are we down and how long is it going to be up before it is fixed? Contentstack's never put me in that situation, so thank you.
Yeah, I love hearing nice things, especially when you throw my name in the mix, right? And I think kind of just to put a fine point on that, right, is all of that's happening in the back end, right? Whether it's the technology or the service that you're getting from your different vendors, all of that leads into what some of those drivers are for customers, right? So customers that are interacting with digital brands, they have higher expectations now than they ever had, right? They're expecting technology to just work. They're expecting us to be able to go quickly to time to market. And I think what that really leads into is this idea of what are some of the core themes really that drive growth at brands and organizations, right? And first and foremost is that customer experience. There, like I said, there's these high expectations of lightning fast, hyper personalized experiences on whatever the channel or the device of choice at that moment of time is. And the conversation is expected to carry on from one device to one channel to the next. And then that leads into this idea of really interacting with the customer wherever they are, and not just from a digital perspective, from a device perspective, but also a physical location perspective, right? Whether they're going in and interacting with kiosks or brand managers or salespersons, right? Being able to surface information about their journey to other humans or physical locations that they might be at is just fantastic. And then, you know, when we have all of these systems connected and we're able to leverage the data, we can do things like trial. We can test a decision, let the data generate, and then choose whether or not that was successful and replicate success, or drop failures and just keep running right along. And I think a lot of that really leads into the idea of doing that from a personalization perspective. So let's just quickly kind of run through a little personalization 101, if we could.
For Leesa, anyway, this is sort of our core 6 points that we look at, specifically sort of around marketing as well, and on-site. So we've got behavior, current page, first page, party data, third-party data, traffic source, and location. So behavior is everything that they do on the website, be that a page or a product that they've looked at. Current page, it's very sort of effective to sort of leverage that. because we can call APIs from there to bring on specific new content if they're on specific pages. First-party data, so that's really what the customers provided to us if they've purchased before, and we can sort of look at that data to say, okay, they've had an interest in these products, or they bought these products, or they're from, say, a specific location, and we can deliver products faster to them in that location. So let's serve those kind of products to them, by merchandising on the website.
Would it be an oversimplification then to kind of think of this as, who are they, what are they doing, and where are they doing it?
I would definitely agree with that.
All right, I like wrapping things up, so
yeah.
So even I can figure it out as well. I think that in that data, right? If you think about it as attributional data, right, the metadata around someone, and that behavioral data, that allows us to make all sorts of crazy kind of inferences as to what it is that they're after, what their intentions are. And then with that data, then we can move along to what can we do with it, right? How do we action it, and what types of actionability are available to us?
Yeah, and then from those events, we can definitely sort of look at not just on site, but also after their visit as well. So the content that we can actually put in Contentstack can be used to sort of provide external messaging, and that can be a resource as well. So it's not just a case of, we have a team that deal with retargeting, and their messaging might be completely different to what's on site. And so now, because of Headless and Contentstack, we can effectively use that data to sort of bring it across and have that sort of singularity of journey that you've mentioned, Nick.
Excellent. All right, so I think we've set the table a bit. We've provided a little bit of context, a little bit of background information, where we think the market is. So let's stop kind of theory crafting around it. And Richard, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your journey at Leesa Sleep has been like, going through these transformational changes that you guys have embraced?
Yeah, so we launched in 2015. We launched with Shopify, and we are still with Shopify. That's our e-commerce platform, and they've been such a great partner throughout the years. Very quickly, as we grew and our products grew, we needed to sort of tell a story about our products, our brand, and those kind of stories come with complexity and management. So it wasn't really, back in 2016 anyway, it was very difficult to achieve. It was a bit cumbersome, and you were sort of locked in with Shopify. And don't get me wrong, they've done some fantastic improvements, and they've done some good things recently. But we looked at Headless around 2016, and it really kicked off in 2000. It was a difficult start, but we had a very tight deadline. Contentstack really sort of helped us I would say, looked at the positives and what we can actually sort of say, okay, these are the key KPIs that Headless is going to give us. One of the promises was, a faster website. That was definitely one of the things that we were looking for. And then the customization and the integration with Shopify to sort of effectively improve that workflow. So we weren't sort of doing, updates on Shopify and Contentstack. We can sort of bring everything into one and really sort of improve how we actually manage our content. So we signed with Contentstack in 2021. We started it in February, and we launched in July. There's a few hiccups, here and there. But overall, to deliver Headless website and also a rebranding during that period of time as well. It wasn't just a case of grabbing, the components that we had on Shopify and just transferring them across. We rebuilt it in Next.js. complete overhaul of the branding, and yeah, I think we gave ourselves a pat on the back anyway.
No, that's incredible. And I mean, from February to July, that's not a long time to go through a website launch from kind of beginning to end. So I think that's a true testament to how quickly your team was actually able to pivot into the idea of composability and looking at those kind of development projects from a different perspective. I think it's one of the hurdles that technology teams need to kind of get over a little bit when making that shift from sort of that monolithic approach to more of a microservices oriented kind of streamlined development process. So yeah, kudos to you all for figuring it out and getting it live, even with a couple of hiccups. But what good project doesn't have some confusion in it?
I did ask for August as the deadline, but yeah.
Over promise,
Yeah.
or no, under promise and over deliver. Like it.
Yeah.
All right. So what are some of the enhancements and the changes to the experience that you guys have had in the last 2 years of having made this transformation to sort of a composable commerce experience?
So as I said, page speed was sort of a key driver for us. I think we were hovering around 6 seconds for an onload page, and in e-commerce time, that's just not acceptable. Now, that's not down to just Shopify. There's a few other sort of external factors and what have you, but the driver for us, or the goal, was to actually get it down to 2 seconds. Where we actually sit at now is under 2 seconds, and we hover around on average just around 1 second, which is for us fantastic. So we deliver that on a static template. So all the data is sort of built with the application. We pull all the data in from Contentstack, and it's yeah, that's how we achieve that good success. Content anywhere, we can use that content on site. We can API or request that data, if needed, to other resources to enable sort of, customer experience team, for example, to pull in frequently asked questions, so that the content or the frequently asked questions are a source of truth in one location. The organic reach, now this has sort of been a favorite of mine over the past, I would say, year, definitely anyway, is that with page speed and all the other factors that Google look at, they were dinging us obviously with the slow speed. With the fast speeds now that we get, and the other effects like content layout shifts and those other things, Google have recognized that we've definitely improved, and we've had some success with improvement in organic reach. This has gave us a 30x on traffic volume organically. Obviously, there's some SEO improvements in regards to the content that we drive from Contentstack, and we're able to actually build our content and SEO how we want it to, and specifically, and we use GraphQL to pull the data that we want on a page. And so, to get very specific with the data and the content has been a factor of that success. As I mentioned as well, reduced time to production. We actually launch, and I don't think we've ever done this ever. We actually launch on Tuesday 5 products within a day. And this was a simple case of we queued and had content queued ready. And it was just a simple case of one button click, and away we go. And reliability and stability, everything's built statically. So there's no sort of server-side rendering, so we don't depend too much on making sure API calls are consistently there all the time. So that gives us a bit more freedom to have that reliability.
Yeah, they all speak volumes for themselves, right? I do love that 30x increase in organic traffic. You can't pay for those kind of results, right?
No.
So it looks to me, right, like you all have put together what I would consider an incredibly strong foundation for a composable implementation, right? You've got all the right technologies in place, you've got the foundation, you've got an incredibly performant experience for folks. And so leading into that, going into the world of personalization, do you want to give us a couple of examples of how you're using that today and what your plans for the future are?
Sure, yes. So we have dynamic cart cross sell. So when someone adds a product to their cart, we look at that item and we say, okay, well, what based off of that item in the cart or many items in the cart, what products would we recommend based off of that sort of list, which is a key driver really. Enables someone to actually add another item that works well with what they've already chosen very quickly and easy. That all that data is in Contentstack, and we've sort of provided that logic on the app, so it pulls that data very successfully. We've done proof of concepts on sleep position content. So when someone Googles, I want to find the best mattress for a side sleeper, they may stumble across one of our articles based off of those keywords. So we can see off Google that they have an interest in side sleeping. We can then dynamically add queries to the URLs within that article that allow us to then on the product page, and when they go over to the product, is for us to say, okay, this person is really interested in the product, and their intent is a side sleeping position. So let's show them awards that we've received for this product for best in class of side sleeping, or back sleepers and those kind of things. And that really sort of brings through that story and the journey that they're on.
No, that's really neat. I mean, you think about some of these things, and what resonates to me is that you're combining this idea of content and commerce at the same time. So depending on the articles that somebody is looking at, you can infer, right, what their intent is, and then recommend appropriate products. So you can still hit that business goal of selling things that are going to keep people happy and keep them as loyal customers, but also lead them to thought leadership content, right, based on what it is that they're interested in. So I think it's a really interesting use case of kind of combining the content for commerce experience. And so these are things that you guys are kind of running at the moment. What are your thoughts for the future, right? Big question.
I mean, yeah, that is a big question. So as I said, we've just released 5 new products. It is our chill line. So how do we get someone from what we call our Leesa 1.0 products to get them to upsell across to the chill line? And so we're currently in testing a component that will do that upsell. And so when you go on one of the 1.0 product mattresses, you may or may not currently see a component that will try and advertise that chill line. And when you choose a variant size on the mattress, and that component will actually update as well to show the price relative to the selection that you chose on the current product page that you're on. And so that may be an uplift of, say, a $50 or $100 to move up to the chill line, and that sort of data enhancement to say, okay, it's not just static, it's live data. So that enables them, okay, it's not that much of an upsell. So let's go check out the chill line, and hopefully they'll buy. So that's something that we're currently working on.
No, that's super cool. Well, I mean, I guess one of the big questions, right? As a technologist and nerd at heart, my curiosity is really kind of lean into what's your tech stack look like? How are you able to deliver these personalized experiences, at scale and dynamically?
I would say it's very simple, and I know that some of the companies that I've worked with in the past, agencies and clients, there's so much complexity involved, and that within itself requires a wealth of a team to sort of bring that to life and managed. We have Contentstack delivering the content. We've got Shopify delivering, the product details and that e-commerce purchasable experience. We use Jasper to help our in-house content writer, but we also have agencies as well to sort of bring that content together on site. Now all of that then feeds into Vercel. And so when we make updates on Contentstack, because Shopify and Jasper, feed into that, is Vercel will via webhook will just notice that sort of publish of content. Vercel will build the site and make it live. Really, basically, and that's as simple as I think it should be. Obviously, I've talked about the test that we're currently running with that upsell, and that's what we're using Optimizely with. And then after that, that data then, through objects and many other resources, that we feed it into Yotpo and Klaviyo to sort of do emails, SMS, and then obviously collect reviews as well to feed back onto the website. I think it's as simple as that, really.
Yeah, and I think that's, there's this idea of simplicity that you mentioned a couple of times there, right? And one of the things that we hear a lot is that these projects need to be big and complex and cumbersome. But what it sounds like to me is that you all looked at it from let's implementing something that is elegant and less complex, right? So keeping that complexity level down and tamped down as much as you can. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that was the right decision for you all to make? Do you think that you should have gone down a more complex route, or what are your thoughts there?
We could have got as complex as we wanted, but who's going to sort of manage that? And does my team have? Well, am I given the budget to have a team that can manage that? We built it on Next.js, which has enabled us to work with Vercel very closely. It's allowed us to provide the preview links that enables us Contentstack to be previewed, QA'd, and delivered within a few clicks. It doesn't need to get any more complex than it does, and Contentstack, with the ability to move content around or design content and architect content however we want, it's very easy for us to deliver any kind of website, really.
Yeah, and I think kind of on that topic of content, if we move along a little, we can I'd be interested to hear about some of your content goals and how implementing the approaches that you guys took, how that sort of panned out.
So in the early days, we didn't really have a blog. Then we brought a blog on, and it was on a separate domain, and it didn't really achieve what we wanted it for. There was no SEO benefit because it was on a subdomain. So when we moved to headless, we said, right, okay, one of the goals is that content has to be sort of where we need it to be, and having that ability to provide a blog and articles and the data on there and how we want it to sort of be delivered was a key driver for us. So as you'll see at the top, those are our feature images, and we can tag articles how we want, whether it be feature or a specific category. Now, the content managers don't need to really get too technical. They just need to be able to write the content, add the assets, and away they go. The application and the data actually works wonders for us. So we can provide latest articles, and then it provides all the categories that we do have. This page loads fast. We've never been able to achieve that previously, and this allows customers to sort of discover a wayfind, improve our swim lanes for the visitors flow, to discover new content and sort of help them sort of discuss, find the answers that they want or help a purchase decision. Something that I don't think we have a slide, but we built blocks in Contentstack that enabled us to sort of merchandise article content. So if you're looking at hybrid content around hybrid mattresses, we can provide product blocks in that article that would recommend hybrid mattresses, and sort of allow the customer journey to sort of flow through that. And that's how we sort of leverage articles on our website.
Yeah, I think that's really empowering as well, right? Is we talked about, and we flashed up on one of those personalization slides, right? One of the things that you can do is make suggestions or have related content and related products, and you're not tied to one of those engines or the other, and being able to layer those things into search results as well, right? So even if you're looking for products, being able to have, putting in the content block into your search results for products, right? Now you're giving people the options of choosing which of those lanes you were talking about they want to live in. So I guess if you had a time machine though, Richard, and you wanted to jump back to the beginning of the project, right? Now that you've had a few years under your belt of this, what would you change if you wanted to change anything?
I would have done personalization baked in right from the start. I would work with the wider team, so get marketing to understand what personalization is on the website and how they can leverage it as well, and get them to have skin in the game as well. The old sort of theory is that marketers love landing pages, and sort of designing specific content around those landing pages, and sort of allowing them to have that sort of platform or landing platform to put visitors onto that page to then go to a page where they want to sell a product. Why not have that content on the product page or within your normal workflow of content? That's what we're trying to achieve at Leesa, and have pages that marketers love to send visitors to, and visitors like to actually sort of be landed on, or landing on, rather than bounce. And reducing that bounce is sort of key. Would I change anything else? No. I think personalization baked in right from the start. I wish we'd done it from day one.
And I love it, man. Like you can't fake the smile that you just gave when you were giving your retrospective in the past. So yeah, that's you and your teams should feel very proud that you guys were able to sort of activate and get to where you are today, and with a clear plan of accelerating some of those projects into the future as well. So I guess what would you say your big key takeaways that you've learned so far are?
Controlling content. It's how is it published? To have that workflow from there is a whole process before it even gets onto Contentstack, and the teams do a fantastic job at coming up with these content ideas. But once that content idea has been created, signed off, we always struggled in the past of getting onto the website as quickly as possible. We've now achieved that, and once it's signed off, within a day, a few hours, we can deliver that content. And something that you said previously was like getting there first and getting the content online. That's the success for us. Being reactive to trends. Our competitors do fantastic jobs, and hopefully we do a fantastic job in serving our customers as well. But we look at what our customers' needs and wants, and we provide, surveys for them to provide feedback, or they can ring us or talk to live chat, and we take notice of that. And sometimes they point out bugs as well, so we like to react to those specifically as well. As I said, we've had zero downtime with Contentstack, so we can't thank you enough for that. And testing personalization now, I wish we'd done it right from the start. But as we get more in depth with our data and the data that we have available to us, how can we improve that experience for our customers? And we want them to have an enjoyable experience on our website and any interaction that we have with our customers. So I think less frustration is sort of more success for our company, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can trim down on some of that friction and make things go a little bit smoother, everybody feels at least like they're winning. I think all these are great points. So thank you very much, Richard. And kind of as we jump forward a little bit, one of the things that I'm kind of reminded of is back from my childhood watching Reading Rainbow, right? Don't take our word for it. Obviously Richard has just shared an incredible story, but there's also plenty of other incredible brands that have gone through these digital transformations, leveraging e-commerce, leveraging personalization. And you can find examples of these use cases, all the ones listed on the screen here on contentstack.com's website. There's also a podcast called People Changing Enterprises, which is worth a listen to as well. And there's a couple of e-commerce specific examples in there with Mindy from ASICS talking about moving from a monolith to a composable, and with some folks from Levi's who went through a similar transition as well. So if you're in one of those kind of situations, you've got Richard's story, you've got their stories, go ahead and kind of crowdsource some of that information to help you figure out what your individual plan needs to be. And I guess, and thinking about that, right, when we're thinking about what are our plans need to be, here's just a couple of kind of key considerations to get started with, right? And Richard, again, keep me honest here, because I'm just a vendor saying things on a slide. You've lived it, right? But first and foremost, right, what are your goals, right? What is the experience you're trying to deliver? What are you trying to expose folks to? What is your first thought going to be? And then will you be able to innovate fast enough, right? And fail, right? That's one of my favorite ideas is failing fast and just getting back up and running, right? So making sure that your team is structured in a way that as you're doing things, right, in Richard's case, they were working from a sprint-based model, so they could do things in 2-week increments. And what was working, they kept doing. What isn't working, you sort of just drop it and move on to something else. And then that leads into the idea of agility. Will this solution be able to make your teams move quicker, right? Will my content editing teams move quicker? Will my product teams move quicker? Will my digital teams who have to make all the assets for those things, right? Do all of these technologies actually do that thing of getting things a little bit faster? And then, of course, on to things like future readiness, by going down the composable route that's there. And then, of course, setting out a good ROI plan and making sure that as you're going through those initial phases, you're on track to hit those things. And then kind of lastly, I think just if I summarize some of the things we've talked about today, a composable approach facilitates the infrastructure that you need today, but it's also going to be based on the needs of tomorrow because it can pivot. Caring for the customer and sharing the right information, the right conversation at the right time when it's important to them is critical. And personalization in commerce really helps tie those two things of what their consumer goals are and what your business goals are. Testing, right? Fail fast, right? Figure it out, what's working, what isn't working, make sure that your approach is valid. Customers do weird things, right? Humans, we're odd creatures. The behaviors that you might expect at the beginning of your project might not be what you actually see when the data comes to talking. So being able to react to what those changes in the data are is incredibly important. And a composable approach will allow you to pivot the technology stack to meet with whatever the changing technology world is. And I'm going to say it one more time: fail fast and start simple so that you can also scale fast as well. So I guess with that, do we have any questions?
We sure do. First of all, thank you both so much for such a phenomenal conversation. This was so engaging and fun to listen to. This question, I guess we could start with Nick, and then Richard, if you have anything to add. But when going composable, does it require a full rip and replace of your existing technologies?
Yeah, so there's two key schools of thoughts there. I love this question actually. You can either kind of start disassembling your infrastructure piece by piece, or you can go for that big old rip the band-aid off approach, right? And both are incredibly valid. When we look at organizations that have been around for a while, making that large monumental shift into a more composable space, sometimes you need to be able to take those baby steps to put the proof in the pudding first and foremost, so that you can show your internal stakeholders the approach that we've outlined is on track, it's working, and that we're getting the value out of this investment that we need to be getting. That's typically a great approach for larger organizations that are really rooted in a lot of the technology that they have. And that's probably the right approach for most organizations. But you can also just say, hey, we have what we have today, and we're just going to replace it, right? I think, you know, when Richard's team made that decision, they fell more into that category, and being able to already have technologies like Shopify in that case that was already implemented, right, allowed them to pivot from one approach to another approach without having to replace what is probably the most important part of that implementation that they had. So both approaches work, right? And it really just depends on how rooted your infrastructure already is and what your goals are.
Yeah, based on the goals, we wanted speed and everything, so everything was a case of let's start fresh. But if you're just after content and not adding extra content, probably replace your blog or the content below the fold in a product page, and start there and then grow.
Oh, you are on mute.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you both for those great answers. Another question we have, what are some of the gotchas to look out for?
I mean, I think from my perspective, I think a lot of times it's biting off more than your team can chew. I see a lot of implementations create friction among themselves when a small team, when you have a tiger team or an innovation team that ends up with a project that's bigger than they can support. So I think one of the gotchas is, you know, the composable approach is a solid option, but it's not a sort of panacea for other issues that you might have from an organizational perspective. So I think setting realistic expectations about what things can achieve and how long things are going to take is an incredibly important part of that sort of initial scoping process. So I think that's one of the big ones. Also, winning over the hearts and minds of people. A lot of times people want to make these big, you know, institutional changes, and you want to be the champion for change, and those are all good things, but I think it's always important to make sure that you're leading other people along that path as well, where you're going to create friction between folks who have an invested historical presence with those other technologies or the process that backs those up. So being able to lead people along with you as you're trying to lead the organization through the journey, I think that's a huge thing that a lot of folks can overlook.
Yeah, I completely agree. Things will always take longer than you predict. So those are the gotchas. Also, often moving from whatever solution that you're working with to a headless solution will be a change in code language or whatever the developer is going to be using. So make sure that your developers are trained and have experience with that new technology, so that they can be successful, and also choose a language that they're going to love to use as well.
Both great responses. Thank you both. We have time for one last question. How do you evaluate success of going composable?
Yeah, so I think it's going to depend on the initiative, right? So if you're going composable, you're doing it for a reason, right? And as we talked about when you're setting up those key steps, right? It's that setting of a goal. Is my goal to reduce my time to go to market with new content, new promotions, new landing pages, new? Is my goal to increase the loyalty and the share of wallet that I have with my existing customer base? Is my goal to attract net new customers? Is my goal. So having set out whatever that goal is going to be, that's going to set those metrics that you'll be able to measure and turn around and say, as we're moving through this process, because it is a process, right? To Richard's point, sometimes it can be quick, from February to July, I think, right? So it can be a quicker process, but you still have to lay out those key metrics. If everything's going to be leading into this idea of letting the data help make the decisions and reinforce the decisions, it's very important that you're clear on the onset of what is the purpose of doing this. You're putting in a lot of work to change something, so make sure you list out all of those things and then track the progress of each of those as you're going through it, right? So yeah, I think that's my rambling answer for that one.
I would also say, you might have a goal like us to achieve, 2 seconds on speed. We didn't achieve that straight away, when we launched, and it took us a few iterations and a few changes to sort of finally get to where we were happy. And then it was another iteration over that to optimize that even further, because as we sort of had that experience with Contentstack and headless, we very quickly said, well, 2 seconds is pretty slow. We can actually get faster. I would also say you're not going to achieve everything in one go. So have fair expectations in your goals. We had speed, we had integrations with other partners, and that we just weren't able to achieve, on Shopify alone. That then, it's a long journey to work with all the different partners, and some partners don't even know what headless is. So it's also sort of working with them to sort of gear them up and say, okay, we want to work with you, but this is what we're doing, and it's a new experience for them and us. So
Thank you both so much for your insight today. I'd like to once again give a huge thank you to our speakers, Nick and Richard. And also thank you to everyone who is attending live with us today from wherever you're joining. With that said, that will conclude our webinar for today. As we mentioned at the beginning, we will send out the recording. And once again, we thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day or your evening.